Hi everyone, welcome to Bad Lines. Sloth and myself. So yeah, we're obviously in the midst of relegation battle. Not ideal, but there's been some massive shakeups in the last 24 to 48 hours. Two of our, I guess, closest rivals in this relegation battle of change managers. We just seen Tottenham, unfortunately, get rid of Thomas Frank, who, quite frankly, I think was doing an incredible job at Spurs. Absolutely incredible. I have no more superlatives than that for him. And Sean Dyche has been removed. So Marinakis is now on to his fourth manager of the season, which is incredible, quite frankly, to go to Nuno, to Ange, to Sean Dyche, and now he's coming to Victor Pereira. What an absolute mess. And if I was a Forest fan, I'd just be sitting there bewildered as to what's happened at that club. But Sloth, do you find, obviously, they've Forest made the change because they drew last night, there's only 3 points in it between us and them. Considering they've got a manager who's on a 30 to 33% win rate in Sean Dyche. I know Sky put out like a 47% win rate. Don't know where that's come from, but it's around about 30, 33%. Statistically, you would say that suggests that they'll do enough to stay up. Do you think this is a very bold, significant choice to then go from Dyche to Pereira, who, yes, he had a decent spell at one point with Wolves, but was never, in the very first instance, shall we say, wasn't exactly setting the world alight? Do you think they've taken a very big gamble?
I think it's a risky one. Like I think Pereira's a good manager, and he was kind of unlucky with his start at Wolves. They weren't bad. They certainly were improving game to game, but he went on that incredible run, and a lot of that I think was down to the groundwork that he laid and the standards that he's got the players to perform to. The issue with Forest is that they have incredibly talented players, but they are not performing at all. And also, I mean, if you look at some of the stories about what happened and the manner in which the sacking was conducted, this is all hearsay and obviously reporter guff at the end of the day. We don't actually know what happened, but by the sounds of it, that Marinakis pretty blatantly went in there, all guns blazing, told quite a lot of people what he thought of them, and berated Sean Dyche in front of them. Now, look, if there's one thing that Sean Dyche does do well, it's man manage, and it's get players on side and pushing in the same direction. And I think a lot of Forest fans, although they perhaps didn't like the style of play, they would not have argued that the team looked more together and more composed and organised. So when you think that you potentially have an owner just steamrolling their way into the dressing room, telling a manager what a bad job they're doing, how badly the team are doing.
Just look at last season when they were pushing for top four, and yes, they started to fall away, but Marinakis is on the pitch berating Nuno, doing something that a Forest manager hasn't done in God knows how many years, because they've been out in the Premier League for 20 years, I think, roughly. That's maybe an exaggeration, but been out for a significant lump of time. And now you're having a manager who's giving you your most successful spell in the Premier League in probably many of their fans' memory. It's just, but that's the guy that these managers are working with.
I think that, look, it's a Watford level carousel of ownership, and I think you'd be really hard pressed to look at what's going on as a Forest fan and feel optimistic, other than the fact that you do have a good core bunch of players. But to be honest, if I was, people might think this is hyperbole, but at the end of the day, if I'm a player who's got no attachment to the club, say I'm Morgan Gibbs-White to a degree, who doesn't have any attachment, but would be one of the first players to leave if they go down.
All intents and purposes, was looking to leave in the summer.
Yeah.
Via him or his agent were making it aware to people that, by the way, I have a release clause.
Just had a great season. if they go down, he's probably going to be one of the, their prize assets, and he's probably going to be one of the most vocal about leaving. And it then becomes a case of, well, actually, do I really want to stay in this environment? The players thinking, what do I want to do? I'm not saying they're going to down tools, but I do think that there is a risk of it if you are a Forest fan. You could just basically see the team go, well, I don't want to play for this owner. I don't really want to be at this club anymore. And it's a very dangerous one in terms of Spurs. I think I've even said on this channel that I don't think Thomas Frank was the right appointment from the beginning. I think it was a colossal mismatch of style of play and what the fans expected. And also, like, with respect to Frank, I think he's a very good manager, but it's a case of a team saying they want to win things and they want to be chasing the big things, and yet they're appointing a manager who has done very little in the game. As a
It's interesting. Well, it seems like managers from Brentford are very hard to assess because when you look at what's happened consistently, they've gone from within. Even from the times of Wolverton, who was obviously our assistant at one point. But every time, they've looked from within. They went to him, to Dean Smith. From Dean Smith, they then went to Thomas Frank. And obviously from Frank, now they've gone to Andrew. But they've consistently had this carousel within Brentford of having these people that are so in tune with what that club is. And they're so indoctored into that and the network that they have that they are set up to succeed. And each manager has seemingly improved on the last. And again, but that's also because of their longevity in each division meant they've been able to build per manager. So I think there's such a hard team to assess. And we were talking about at the time saying that Thomas Frank can go one or two ways because he's that person now that you look at and go, oh, he deserves, in inverted commas, the big kind of opportunity, but will he be as good out of that environment? And at the moment, he's clearly shown he hasn't. But there was an interesting question, though, Sloth, that came up that I wanted to kind of put to you. Would you swap Forest's squad right now for ours? I don't think I've swapped the squad. There are certain elements within it that I would happily take, but I probably wouldn't take the squad, in my opinion.
Minus Bowen, yeah, minus Bowen, it's not a question for me. They've got depth. Fernandez, yeah, again, he's probably the only one that I think outside of Bowen I'd be concerned about. But even then, they have got a lot of talent. I just think that it's a mix of this weird. It's almost to a degree the same situation that Tottenham have had with Frank, where they had one style of play that they wanted to play with Ange, and strangely enough, Forest did exactly the same thing. They went from they did the opposite almost. They went from a very free flowing, we're going to score one more than you kind of manager in Ange, and they went to Deitch, who is the complete opposite of that almost. Yeah. And so was Nuno. They went from completely counter styles, and almost like West Ham have done with David Moyes and Graham Potter. Lopetegui, these styles that don't gel at all with the squad that they have, and then been surprised that they don't do that well. Now, in Deitch's situation, I kind of feel like he's doing the best he can, but again, it's not because I don't think the players aren't very good. I think it's just because, first of all, morale is a bit shot. And also, they are in a situation where they've also got Europe to contend with. And as much as I love the history of Nottingham Forest, this is an alien concept for this squad of players to kind of deal with, apart from Milenkovic. And Milenkovic lost in a final against us. And it's a very, very tough thing to ask players to put that to one side and put to the side, your league form, and focus on a tournament. And Moyes did that by the skin of his teeth, but he's a very experienced manager, and I just don't really know if I can see Forest turning it around. I don't want Forest to go. I don't really want to see teams relegated, if I'm honest. As much as I kind of joke about it, I think with the financial situation of teams these days and the money involved, it's such a huge thing to be relegated that apart from Spurs, to be honest, I don't really wish relegation on anyone, because Spurs will be all right. That's the thing. People might go, oh, but the finances, all their stadium, all the wage bill is very responsible there. The assets they have will more than be enough to cushion the blow of relegation. They'll come back up probably next season. They'll probably be the winners of the championship. But it's such a strange thing to even talk about. And if you'd said that at the start of the season that Spurs would be relegation candidates again, I might add, for the second season running, people would go, no, not this season, not under Thomas Frank, who's much more secure. But it's happened again, and they've not learned anything. And this is something that we have been so critical about on this channel. Ownership's not learning their lesson, and yet we're in a situation where Nottingham Forest's owner, he's never going to learn his lesson. Let's face it, he's never going to learn. But Spurs' lesson, they should have learned. The new owners should have learned from Levy and gone, right, we're going to change things up a bit. The teams around us, you even look at someone like Gary O'Neill. Sorry, not Gary O'Neill, bloody turkey teeth at Wolves. I say that with
I know you're on about, yeah, but I mean, his name's escaped me as well.
Is it Evans? Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
But you look at the mistakes that they've made, where these are managers who haven't necessarily done anything.
Rob Edwards
fits what they need. Rob Edwards, that's it. I was going to say Gareth Evans, and I was like, he made the bloody raid. What am I doing?
To digress, what a film.
Yes, yeah.
If you haven't watched the raid, go watch the raid. It is epic.
Go watch the raid. The next time West Ham, there's a bad West Ham result, just stick the raid on and watch raid 2 as well. But I think, it's one of those things where it's owners not learning a lesson. And I think this season will very much be defined by ownerships not learning their lesson. And, we've kind of seen many, many mistakes from owners, particularly over the last 48 hours. But I think David Sullivan is almost...
He's looking like the stable, calm head out of the three at the moment.
Let's not go too far, because that's actually a really good caveat.
If we are to stay up, then it looks like, well, he made the right choice because he went earlier. Again, we're caveating this, right? I'm playing slight devil's advocate. Some people could argue, well, he saw the danger signs early and went early, and he brought in a manager that is now turned around. But when we talk about the shake-ups, Spurs have now finally bit the bullet and got rid of Frank, which is absolutely the right decision for them. For everyone else, horrible decision, because they were so bad under Frank. It was almost a 3 points for anyone who played him, to be brutally honest. Boris getting rid of a manager at a 30 to 33% win rate in this point of the season is a massive gamble. Pereira doesn't match that, then they are arguably right up against it. And I know some people might also look at the league and go, well, you're talking about Spurs, you're talking about Forest. What about Leeds? They're only a point ahead of Spurs. But then when we look at Leeds as an example, they are, of that 4 teams, you would say they are the most stable from a squad point of view, the most stable from a structure point of view, more stable from a manager point of view. So a manager who's had much of that core for at least 2 to 3 seasons, 2 seasons, I think. And obviously this year has now found a way in which to adapt, in which to stay and win games. And obviously the game against Chelsea does prove that they are most likely going to continue picking up points and slowly pull away. I don't see Leeds as being part of this. I know someone mentioned to me earlier about Palace, but I literally just see the line from Spurs on 29 points to us is where it is. Spurs fans are genuinely concerned. Now, obviously, they're looking at the likes of, De Zebra, etc. So again, they're still not learning. They're learning from one style to another. He's coming from, Prison FC. And if you're getting booted out of Prison FC for having a bad attitude, then Jesus Christ, you have issues. Because let's face it, Prison FC, there's a myriad of problems there when you look at the players that are in that club. But again, we're talking about the shakeups as well. What is so incredibly frustrating with us is that we had a 10-game period where we were winless under Nuno. And only at the end of that 10 games did they go, you know what, we've only given you staff. Halfway through, are we going to give you Rui Barbosa as a goalkeeper coach? Do you want another staff member? It took 10 games without a win before they brought in Paco. Paco is being, lauded by some of the players, going, he's just brought us back to basics. He's sorted out us defensively, and he's meant to be an attacking coach. But I think what people don't forget sometimes with attacking coaches is that they attack also via the defence, because we are far more aggressive and far more forward thinking in terms of our defensive play, which means we get more of the ball and we actually cause the opposition more problems. But had he been brought in during that 10-game stint, or even at the start of that, one of those draws might have been turned into a win. One of those losses might have been turned into a draw. We could have, for argument's sake, 4 extra points. Let's just be something a really realistic one, and that would put us out of the relegation zone right now. 1 point clear of Forest. Not a huge gap, but a point clear. But it's just frustrating that, again, we talk about, look at the terribleness that Nottingham Forest have done. Look at what Spurs have done in terms of their poor decision making over the course of the season. Again, ours, poor decision making. Again, with only going to bringing in a manager and only saying to them, you can have youth staff. We're going to promote from within, which, granted, they've been very good at youth level and arguably do deserve the opportunity to be part of the wider fold. But to then not give him any one of his until we got into a really bad run, and they went, you can have a goalkeeping coach. And then the run continued, and they went, do you want anyone else? And he brings in Paco. And then all of a sudden, our fortunes change. Yes, there maybe is a slight level of, I guess, coincidence that he changed when he came in. Maybe they just started to learn the patterns a bit more. Paco was very clear in what was needed to help out Nuno. But it's just frustrating that had we made better decisions, and after we saw maybe a run of 5 games where it wasn't working, we should have just been like, what else do you need that we can give you now? Because we can't buy players right now. But what can we do in this we just have 5 bad games. What can we give you to ensure the next 5 games in the lead up to essentially when we end up playing QPR, which is in the new year? What can we give you till then that can help you? Can we give you staff members? And had we done that, we may have seen a change, which may have meant we're actually in a better position than what we currently are. And also, we've lost 20 points we've lost this season as well.
I think it's not just that. It's the, we kind of say they're making David Sullivan look good. That's just let's look in that in real terms. It's just recency bias. The fact that he didn't sign a centre back early in the window. Even if Disasi was the top target, you look at the defence and you go, this is terrible. Like we can get him on loan, but maybe if we shore ourselves up a bit, we get ourselves a centre back in on day one, and we pick up some results that maybe we wouldn't have got. Maybe we pick up a point against Wolves. We don't get the hiding because we have a centre back in there that isn't Max Kilman.
Maybe we would have beat Forest.
Yeah, and it's like, it's these little things, but also the fact that, let's face it, in the summer it should have been done. And if you had a competent owner, they would have at least tried to commit more to the style of play. Now, people can go, we spent some money in the summer. We kind of didn't. We've covered that enough. I'm not going to touch it again. Yeah. But what I am going to say is, you look at the players that we brought in, or the players that Graham Potter and the recruitment team brought in. So Fernandez was Potter's number 1 target. We know that. But he was also a recruitment team target. So Fernandez and Youth. Fernandez and Youth are 2 players who have been excellent, made a huge difference. And Youth had to go to AFCON, so you can take that with a pinch of salt. But if we had listened to them more, if the owner had actually committed, maybe, gifted the owner Wilson, but got a target in that Potter wanted up top, you then look at it and you go, right, I'm going to put my stall out essentially and put my bets on him. And I find it really daft that, we've just seen Pablo pick up an injury. And again, this is something we could have guarded against because let's face it, you can pretty much guarantee anyone coming into West Ham, there's going to be at least one injury. And then you think, right, what can we do? Because otherwise, if we don't sign another forward, if we don't sign a versatile forward, it doesn't necessarily have to be like an out and out striker, but if you sign a versatile forward who could perhaps play out wide or in that 10 position, a bit like Tati, another Tati in there, and you use their pace and you use their ability on the ball, but you have the option to put them wide, then again, you cover against having to crawl through the season with Tati up top and Callum Wilson. And look, I know you know my thoughts on his last few performances, and I'm going to open it up to the live stream because I think he has been absolutely embarrassing. His performances have been awful in the sense that his work rate has let the entire team down. His lack of pressing has completely changed the reliance and the shape of the team. And his decision making, like people were criticizing Scarles, but if I'm Scarles, if I'm a young player, yeah, you can say maybe he shouldn't have played that pass. He should have had a bit more maturity. But if you're a young player and you see Callum Wilson, who is supposedly a seasoned goal scorer, I'm trusting him. I'm trusting him to stay on side, and I'm trusting him to hold his run, which he didn't do after 10 minutes of being on the pitch. For me, his attitude and application have been absolutely diabolical. And if we do not see a massive increase in his work rate and see some goals coming in, to be honest, I wouldn't even extend his contract. I'd let him go at the end of the season. I don't care unless he scores, a silly amount of goals. For me, it's a real letdown. And we were somewhat positive, but the last few games, whether or not he's seen the January transfer window close and he doesn't like again that he's not one of the key options, we're now forced in a situation where Mr. Unreliable is going to be relied upon.
Has got to get reliable.
Yeah. And it's incredibly daft ownership. It's incredibly daft recruitment. And it's something, again, that, we can say about how they've made David Sullivan look somewhat competent.
Yeah.
This is complete and utter incompetence in a recruitment stage. And it is really, really worrying for me because again, look, Pablo wasn't perfect, and he's not even bloody scored a league goal. But the contrast between how we played when he was on and Callum Wilson has come in, for me, it's night and day. I just think
from a defensive point of view and the way he puts pressure on the opposition allows us to also have something to play off of. I think Wilson did do some good things against Man United. I'm not going to say it was completely terrible. Again, maybe that last second, that last minute kind of pass or trying to put it through the eye of the needle was where he fell short. However, when he's off the ball contribution in comparison to Tati is ridiculous. And the fact that he ran far less than Tati, and Tati played a lot more and has been playing a lot more, is almost indefensible. We keep talking about owners and terrible ownership and so on. There was this kind of question. But for me, I think when I see things like that, for me, I know people don't like Patinsky because he's just anonymous. But the simple truth is, I would take him over Marinakis without a shadow of doubt. Marinakis is, to put it politely, as mad as a box of frogs. And he literally can destroy a team. Just on a whim, because he's annoyed at certain players, he will rip them out. They could be your best players. If they've annoyed him, he'll strip them out. He doesn't care. Manager, he'll strip them out, regardless of what they've achieved. You could be having a great season, he comes on the pitch and he disrupts. At least with Katinsky, whilst he's silent, he would also bring in and employ people to run the operations for him and would be a bank. Something we've asked for David Sullivan to be for many a year. Get people employed, be the bank, shut up and sit back. I would rather take an anonymous owner who is quiet and has other people do the work and just funds than someone like Marinakis, who, whilst it can be entertaining at times when you see him like saying to Gary Neville, "You no longer welcome at my club and coming to the stadium," it's just pure chaos, and you can't fundamentally be okay with it. Yeah, like I understand the sentiment. You know, he's our third choice for a bottom half team, but let's be brutally honest, we shouldn't be a bottom half team. And he was
It's,
only there because he was free. It wasn't because of his quality, it's because he was free and we needed a striker. And Sullivan went, I'm going to do this because he's also attached to a mate of mine. We
look,
could have done better and we should have done better.
it's not just the fact that he's lacking the work rate, because we all know the kind of forward that Callum Wilson is. But again, for a young player to be put in this situation where he's getting like a part of the blame for basically a seasoned pro just not doing his job, staying on side. He had one job to do, not staying on side, and he did some tidy things. Like he did a really good first touch and turn, chest down pass. I think it was out wide Bowen after he came on, and you think, okay, right, that's really good. But there are other times when he's just jogging about, and I'm sorry, like when you're in a relegation battle, I don't care
Traore
if
did
you
the
put.
same.
Yeah,
Traore
yeah,
did.
and this is the element where I said about the, a versatile forward coming in would have been huge. Is that not only does it mean that someone like Traore isn't relied upon as much. I know he's kind of Nuno's trusted man, but it also puts pressure on Wilson. It puts pressure on Wilson to perform. And we knew that Pablo wasn't in the squad. So Wilson's kind of just like, oh well, I can kind of do my thing because I know I'm going to get game time. That's probably the mentality. And to be honest, that I'm making a bit of an assumption there, but I'm making it because I've seen enough of his like clips
But I think
and things
you see
to.
the attitude of he had when he came on in comparison to the lads that were on the pitch from the start. Magassa came on. Again, he was tearing about everywhere, had a couple of great breaks, but got up there to kind of support Wilson when Wilson had a good break. And there was a split second where he could have made a pass, but he didn't. And that split second then got closed up. To be fair to Euro, I'll give Euro his due.
Does well.
Was incredible in that situation. And why he defended that, he consistently put himself in position. And if you watch it, he is consistently scanning, going, "Where's Magassa? Where's Magassa?" Euro, in all fairness, superb in defending that kind of breakaway, and then did brilliantly against Traore. However, Traore would have, some people go, if he'd have done it, there wasn't enough pace on the ball, to be honest, when it was laid to Traore. And then, you could argue, yes, if he steps over, it goes to Wilson, and Wilson's completely free, and Euro's going to go be sent for a hot dog. But the truth of the matter is, I don't think there's enough pace on the ball for it to have passed through and got to Wilson for him to be able to set and shoot. But it's, again, we've had sliding doors moments, and one of the points made as well was like, when you look at the goal we conceded, would we have conceded with Areola? I still think yes, because that ball was so perfectly placed. We lost a point to a perfect shot, quite frankly. I don't think there's any other way to put it. Defensively, big problems in certain aspects. There's probably about 3 or 4 different errors in the lead up to that goal, in all honesty. But the goal that was scored, he could only do one shot. There was only one type of shot he could do, and it had to be perfect. And I don't think the 4 extra inches that Areola has in height would have even given him enough of a reach to have got to it. It was just that perfect of it. I just don't see it would have been saved. Maybe a finger, but still think it would have gone in.
I think for me, I thought Hermansen had a good game.
You did, yeah.
I don't think it was on him. Watching that game, I think if Man United knew Areola was in goal, they would have targeted him. They would have targeted him with a different system, and they would have, put more crosses in and really tried to hammer home on his weaknesses and his decision making. And I think we would have conceded in a different way. And that's kind of, I know it's very negative to say, but the performances of late from Areola, that's where I'm at with
But he's just not
how
given
I'm
any
assessing him.
confidence at all. Hermansen came and claimed crosses, which is something we haven't had a goalkeeper really do this year. Like we mentioned against Chelsea, 2 of their goals were arguably they were in and around that 6-yard area where one of the headers was won. So you want your goalkeeper going, I'm going to claim this, and he didn't. He tried to come out and claim against Forest, and that's maybe what's then stuck in his head in the game against Chelsea. But the fact is, the goalkeeper got to brush that off and go again and do your job and claim crosses. But you look at the way it's all shaping up now. We probably look at the moment the most secure and the most stable because we have a manager who isn't going to implement any new ideas or any new thoughts. With 2 teams that, yes, could they have a manager bounce? Obviously, yes, they could have a manager bounce. However, they're coming in to a period with 12 games to go. They've got to pick players up off the floor. In Tottenham's case, they have a laundry list of players who are out injured. I've just got another player out injured now with is it Oberon? He's now out with an ACL. Odebear, sorry, that's one. He's out with an ACL. Romero's out for another 3 games as well. So you look at Spurs and you go, well, if Forest do have a bounce, the Spurs manager to come in, he's got to do really well to pick up essentially a broken squad. Physically and mentally, they're pretty, banged up and tired at the moment. And if we get another win, followed by another point, all of a sudden that pressure starts to mount. And I think in Talksport, they were talking about Spurs and going through the list of players, and they were just going champagne.
Yeah.
Basically saying that they're not players that are designed to have a fight for a relegation zone. They're designed for those, those champagne moments, that champagne football, but they're not in a champagne football moment because of where they are in the league.
How funny would it be if Kudus got relegated?
Oh, it would be exceptional.
I mean, look, I think that we're in a very tricky situation, and I'm going to be realistic. Part of the reason that I'm so frustrated with Wilson is that I'm now thinking, right, if we're relying on Tati to do all the running and he picks up a knock, what on earth are we going to do then?
Well, we're back to square one.
Yeah, and that is a huge worry. It only takes Tati to tweak his hamstring or something when he's pressing, and then again we're right back to relying on Callum Wilson to start games, and then we're going to have to put Traore out wide, or we're going to have to put Bowen up top. It's a real, again, mess of a situation, and we might have to look at the free agent market. I don't think we will, because again, I don't think David Sullivan is competent enough to do that, and I just think that it's a really tricky situation for us to manage because of a lack of recruitment, but we do have the most positivity behind us, and I think that if we can rally together as a squad, we've got Todibo coming back. That's massive for our centre backs because they don't have to rely on Kilman when we're looking to make a defensive change. It's also a boost to the squad because we've seen that they're very tight knit and they seem to be more together. And I think that if we can keep grinding out the results, we will reel someone in, because when you're at this end of the table and you're struggling, if someone's just going about their work and they're picking up points, it's an incredibly, scary thing. You're looking over your shoulder and going, they keep picking up points and we're struggling. And that's when the infighting can start. It's when all the squabbling can kick off.
I think it's been, it's just that pressure as it builds, and Forest not to have beaten Wolves, who by all accounts were awful really in the game.
We can't talk about beating
Wolves. No, exactly. We can't. We were horrendous in the game against Wolves. They absolutely caught us cold, and we went there with a level of arrogance that wasn't earned or deserved, and got duly shown up for it. Certain players had to look themselves in the face and go, actually, I was an embarrassment, Bowen being one of them. And funny enough, since then, he has been a completely different player. The way he was against Man United was brilliant. Getting put in the cross for Souček, who is now the leading Czech goal scorer in Premier League history. Well deserved as well. What's also I think helped is that Souček has just had everything stripped back to just it being a simple game for him of, I need you in there to disrupt, lay it on to the creative players or get it into Fernandes. And if you can get forward, do it. Essentially, he's gone back to default, back to reset, and had exactly what he was given under David Moyes as to, I just need you to disrupt out of possession. I don't want you rampaging up and running back, doing the big box-to-box movements. I just need you to disrupt. And when there is an opportunity that you see you can get there, then go for it. And now we're going back to basics with Souček. What a different player he is for us. And all of a sudden we're now looking going, oh, yeah, it's the kind of player that we need. And he's been great in there in that double pivot with Fernandes. I think what was promising was the way that Potts looked far better against Man United. Again, he showed that if we need a game where we need just a calm head who's also willing to put his foot in when we're out of possession, that we have that. And he was able to recycle the ball, just take a bit of the sting out of the game and kind of calm things down when we needed to. Magassa came on. I think Magassa is probably better when he's actually allowed to be a bit of a box-to-box player. He's got that long range in legs, and he caused United a couple of problems, really, when he got there. There you go. Who's faster, Sloth, you or Traore? I can tell you for now, I could be beaten by Mark Noble running through treacle. That's how slow I will be. I can't talk to Sloth.
I look, I used to have a turn of pace, but look, I'm not Traore.
Put some baby on me, you might not be able to get past someone.
I think the closest I'd get to keeping up with him is if somehow I managed to bloody tar the ground and stop the baby oil from working its magic. I think he's lost a yard of pace, but he is he's another level.
Yeah,
another
exactly.
level.
It's a yard of pace, but he's still quicker than the players that play.
Do you see that thing about Umbremo and people going, oh my god, I didn't expect Brian Umbremo to keep up to be beating. I'm sorry. How are you surprised by a younger man being as quick as an aging player? Like, I don't understand how people are shocked by that.
But it's, again, when you look at the league, had we got the game against United, then yes, I think we'd all be in a place we're going, well, we're going to survive. See, the fact that we drew does give that level of doubt, but I think when you look at it really in context, I think that's the problem with the Chelsea game, the way that ended, and the way the Man United game. I think context has slightly gone out of those results in some ways, because Chelsea game, I think we all expected us to lose, but because of the position we was in and the capitulation in the second half, again, and also the missed opportunities. Tati had a great chance that could have made it 3-2. Todibo had a great chance. It would have been the winner. If he'd have scored when he did, it would have been the winner. Chelsea would have been crestfallen, and I don't think they would have been able to have mounted an attack at the end. That would have been it. The United game, we were a minute away from 3 valuable points, and had certain players been in the right place or been able to have, if Traore would have played like Somerville did off the ball, and let's be honest, Somerville's the way he's come on leaps and bounds recently, defensively and offensively, has been astounding. Had he come on with that same attitude, again, likely would have prevented it. But when you look at the context of, we expected a loss against Chelsea. So really, what have we lost, really? Other than actually, it's a point for the management staff to go, for 60 minutes, look what you did. We are doing is right. You need to continue that. The moment you go to this default, look what happens. You need to stick to this. If you stick this way, things are going to be positive. The game against United, again, we went to a team that was up for coming on for 5 wins in a row. Would have meant some lad would have got his hair cut. You've stopped that. Enjoy his tears. All you lads go get a haircut tomorrow, and we'll put it up on the media team. But
I can't talk about haircuts.
No, you can certainly talk about it when you look at him. But again, it's in the context, we were all taking a draw, so that those results necessarily aren't as bad as it was when you looked at social media, because of if you really take it, all the emotion out of it, when you think of what we were expecting, well, actually, we've done better against United than we thought as well, because that's a point gained. And we're in a group chat, and I said, and you agreed as well. I was like, I would rather take 1 point than 0. I'd rather, if that's the option of 0 or 1, I'm always taking the 1 point, even if it means, yes, we've dropped 2 points. But if we've dropped 2 points because we struggled, but then held out for a draw, I am taking it, because of this position we're in. Every single point is going to be valuable. But if we can replicate the last 5, I think come the last 2 games, we may already be safe, or in a position where a draw might see us through. I think someone messaged us, and I'm babbling earlier, saying about 4 wins, 4 draws, and then obviously the rest then would be defeats. But that would also put us up to 40 points, which is essentially nirvana. So I'm sitting there going, well, I think really we need to get the same set as what we just had, which is 3 wins, a draw, and a defeat in the next 10. But my mind is that, because if we do that over the next 10, then we go into the last 2 games in a position where we have a bit of breathing space potentially, and we can relax. And if then, we need a result in one of those games, we've got 2 chances which to get a result, and which to kind of, give us that little bit extra kind of comfort. We don't have to be stressed as much, and we can play with less pressure. Whereas the other teams, if Spurs are then below us, Forest below us, they are playing with pressure, and I'd rather us attack the next 10 in the same vein we have now. But look, we need to get 3 wins in the next 5. We can have 1 defeat, but we need to get 3 wins and 1 draw. That has to be, in my mind, the minimum. I think the players will obviously say, we want to win all 5, obviously. But when you've got Man City and Liverpool in that run, that's quite an ask. And also, I think in the next 5 games, it's Man City, Liverpool, Bournemouth, and Fulham off the top of my head. That are in that.
Bournemouth next. That's the very
so
next game.
It's quite a hard set of games there over the next 5. But could we beat Bournemouth? Yes. Could we beat Fulham? Yes. Beating Man City and Liverpool, tricky, but Liverpool are just inconsistent this year, and it's at home, so maybe. And then again, we've just got to look at now and go, I might be Everton at the end of that 5. I'm not sure, but we just have to attack these games in the right way, because if we do, and we can replicate our previous 5 games, I think that's going to put us in very good stead, and we may see ourselves sooner rather than later out of the relegation zone. Because if they don't get a bounce at Spurs or at Nottingham Forest, they're going to be in a bit of trouble. But so they're my final thoughts. What are yours? And we'll wrap it up there. And leave it at that.
I know I've been quite negative over the course of this stream.
It's quite refreshing, because it's normally.
I'm going to try and be positive, and I'm going to try and say that, if there's something to come out of this Pablo injury, I'm kind of hoping it's going to be the switch to the 4-3-3, because I do think we looked really positive. I also think that it means we can stack up the midfield a bit and be less exposed. And particularly against these, tougher opponents that we've got coming up, if we can put midfield threes of, Potts and Souček and Fernandez, then I feel a bit more confident about us keeping a clean sheet, or at least keeping it down to 1 that we concede.
And in fairness, it's actually, considering the lack of games, has looked good in the last 2 games. So fair play to him as well.
I think as well, like the Burton game in the Cup, if we win that, then again, that's another positive bounce. It's into the next round. The group can keep going. If we lose it, then I'm hoping we'll have played a second fiddle squad, so we can kind of go, it's not that big of a deal. It's obviously not what I want, but
I think quite happy not play a single first 11 players who played. Anyone who started the game against Man United, I would not even consider putting them in the team for Burton personally.
Yeah, I think it's one where I'd start Magassa, and we know he had his injury problems and was apparently not quite at full fitness. If we can get these players up to fitness, then suddenly again it's a competitive squad. And though you're lacking the forward, I think there's enough there that we can start to pick up points. And exactly, yeah, the teams around us all have difficult games as well. So if you factor that in, I really think we should be in a good place. But worst case scenario, and this is where I'm going to try and be positive. I think last game of the season, we've got Leeds. Leeds will be safe, I think, by then. It's kind of one of those where we're hoping they've just, we're hoping they're on their holidays. And if we've got something to play for, then maybe we can celebrate together.
Oh yeah, let's be honest. If we stay up on the last day of the season, those stewards ain't going to know what's going to hit them, because there is going to be a pitch invasion. There's no two ways about it. It's going to happen. It just will. But yeah, look, thanks for everyone for joining the stream. Everyone for your comments. Sorry with any comments we didn't get up and kind of talk about and raise. But yeah, thank you for joining. Look, it's going to be a really tough 12 games, but I think there are some really positive green shoots after what's happened the last kind of 5. If we can keep that mentality and that ability of what we've been doing over the next 5 and then 5, we've got to look at like little mini leagues now, blocks of 5. We need to try and top those mini leagues as we're going to go through. If we can, superb, because that will mean we're going to put ourselves in a great position, and hopefully in a position where come the last 2 games of the season, we're not having to look over our shoulders as regularly, and we can have a little bit of breathing room. But yeah, what a crazy 20 to 48 hours where manager changes potentially could completely change the scope and the kind of landscape of the relegation battle. But hopefully our security, I would say, of having Nuno and time with the players for so long now, relatively speaking, that we will continue the momentum we've got and that kind of stability to overtake and to allow those guys to start worrying about everyone else dropping points. And all we can ever really do now, based on where we are, is just concentrate on ourselves and hoping we can do the business. But yeah, everyone, thanks for joining. Till the next time, come on, you Irons.
You Irons.